memories. We're more likely to dwell on criticism than compliment, and bad interactions than good interactions. Those of you who are professors may know this. This may ring true with you. You know, you teach a class and you give the student evaluations out, and of 40 students, 25 say, hey, the class was great. 10 students don't respond, and 4 write, 3 or 4 paragraphs on why you're the spawn of the devil. So you've got 25 good responses, 25 compliments, 4 criticisms. What do you dwell on the next day? It's, of course, the criticisms. So we need something that amplifies the good in our life. Most all of us have far more good that happens to us than bad, and yet because, psychologically speaking, bad is stronger than good, the bad so easily drowns out the good in our lives. So what can we use to help give us a better perspective, I think, on life and amplify the good? And I would argue that thing is gratitude. As Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, in ordinary life, we hardly realize that we receive a great deal more than we give, and that it is with gratitude that life becomes rich. I'm pretty sure he wrote that from a Nazi prison, by the way. So my purpose this afternoon is to show you how gratitude is important to a good and meaningful life. I'm going to organize this talk around 5 different questions. We're first going to talk about what is gratitude. That's important that we're all on the same page. Then we're going to talk about what good is gratitude. And then to anticipate the answer to that, we're going to talk about how is gratitude good. What are the mechanisms that help us understand how gratitude contributes to subjective well-being? We're going to talk about then how gratitude is important to a meaningful life. And finally, we'll deal with the who question. Who is gratitude good for? So, what is gratitude? It's important we all start on the same page here. Now, it's interesting to me, every once in a while I review an article by someone who's just getting into the gratitude field, and one of the things they always say is, well, no one agrees on a definition of gratitude. That's not really true. There's really quite a bit of agreement as long as we're talking about on the same level of analysis. You remember Erica Rosenberg's paper, I think in 1998, where she defined 3 different levels of analysis as we're talking about emotion. So I'm going to talk about 2 of those levels. First of all, gratitude as an emotional state, and then secondly, gratitude as a disposition or an affective trait. So what is grateful emotion? This is how I've defined it. An individual experiences the emotion of gratitude when they affirm that something good has happened to them, and they recognize that someone else is largely responsible for this benefit. Now, there are a few controversial aspects of this, but just a couple of things to highlight here. The something good, I take a very broad definition of. It may be something good that's recently been added to your life. It may be something good that has been good for a long time for you, but you don't recognize it, and then you affirm, hey, gee, my wife really has been good to me all these years, and then you feel grateful. It may be a good in terms of, I thought this bad thing was going to happen, but it didn't. So like, I remember landing in a lightning storm in Miami once, and when I was on the ground, I felt grateful, right? The other thing is someone else. Does it have to be someone else? May not be another person, but I would argue that the force that you feel has provided you with this benefit, you personalize in some way as a personal agent. That's a little bit more controversial and theory-driven. So, this is the emotion of gratitude. What about the disposition or the affective trait of gratitude? Well, very simply and descriptively, people high in the disposition of gratitude, in other words, grateful people, experience gratitude easily and often over a wide variety of circumstances and benefactors. Now, that's a pretty good descriptive definition, but it doesn't really tell us why. Why is a person grateful? Well, we've argued that the fundamental attitude or the fundamental mindset of grateful people is that they have a pervasive sense that all of life is a gift. So grateful people are able to see the giftedness of many, if not almost all, aspects of life. Well, what creates this kind of higher order attitude? We've argued that with some evidence that there are three lower ordered traits, or what we have called three pillars of a grateful person. First of all, grateful people obviously appreciate others. They appreciate how others have contributed to their life, and the other thing that loads onto this factor is they feel it's important to express their gratitude to those who have contributed to their life. Secondly, let's see, I keep pressing the wrong button. Sense of abundance. Grateful people have a sense of abundance, or stated negatively, a lack of a sense of deprivation. If you read my scale, the grad, it's really more a lack of a sense of deprivation than it is positively a sense of abundance. But grateful people feel that they have been given more than they deserve in life. Here's where you see some of the individual differences that might come in. There are some people, like narcissists, who never think they get enough of what they deserve, right? And finally, an appreciation of simple pleasure. This one's really interesting to me, and I think is really important as we investigate gratitude more and happiness more generally. Grateful people appreciate simple pleasures in their life. They appreciate the day-to-day, what some people might call mundane experiences of life, and are grateful for them. I think a great example of an appreciating simple pleasures is from Trish Harrison Warren. Some of you have read this. This is a wonderful book if you're Liturgy of the Ordinary. She says, "For the time being, I'm ignoring the toys and socks strewn across my living room to sit on my couch and drink tea. I pause to notice and to savor the dark tea rippling against the bright white of my favorite mug, the twisted branches of late winter trees outside the window, the warmth of the steam against my face, the dwindling life stretched in long rectangles across the floor." It's a great example. Note also C.S. Lewis's description of Charles Williams, another one of the Inklings, as a bright hearth seen through an open door as we passed, a train of ducks following a brawny farmer's wife, a drill of cabbages in a suburban garden. These were the things that never failed to move him, even to ecstasy, and he never found them incompatible with his admiration for Proust or Wyndham Lewis or Picasso. You can almost see, at least in my mind's eye, you can almost see Lewis and Tolkien and Williams on one of their walking tours, and Charles Williams enjoying these simple pleasures. So grateful people appreciate simple pleasures. Almost anybody's going to feel grateful for a trip to Maui, a huge raise, or a month in Europe, right? Almost everybody's going to feel grateful for that. But what really differentiates grateful from less grateful people is that grateful people enjoy simple pleasures in life. So we've looked at what is gratitude. Now let's look at what good is gratitude. Most of us who got into gratitude research, if not all of us, I can think of maybe Alex Wood's the one that tried to disprove gratitude rather than to, because he thought that gratitude really was good for us. But most of us got into this because we thought gratitude was important to a good life, was important to human flourishing. So let's look at this question: is gratitude any good? Well, I'm going to look at this at three different levels. First of all, cross-sectional correlational studies, then prospective studies, and finally we'll look at true experimental studies. Literally hundreds of studies have shown that grateful people tend to be happier. More recently, we found that they tend to be more joyful. They tend to be healthier. A little bit less data on that, but the data still does show that grateful people tend to be healthier. They're more likable. And by the way, ungrateful people are really unlikable. And they're better at dealing with stress, and they tend to be more giving. A couple of caveats to these findings. First of all of these correlations are with trait gratitude or dispositional gratitude. So it's not just, woohoo, I feel grateful right now. It's really a lifestyle, or as I think Alex Wood calls it, a life orientation of gratitude. And that's likely to be the thing that creates consistent human flourishing, not just feeling good right now. And I want to talk about that more later. Secondly, yeah, there's hundreds of these correlations. And we tend to think that the more we pile up correlations, the stronger the evidence is for a causative relationship between gratitude and happiness. But as Ed Diener's pointed out, of course, that's not the case. Alex Wood loves to tell a story, and every time he tells it, I laugh, so I tell it in almost all my presentations. But he goes to the pub, even though he didn't drink. He goes to the pub and asks his friends a question. He says, well, is it that gratitude causes happiness? Or is it that happiness causes gratitude? And half of his friends say, well, that's obvious, Alex. Gratitude causes happiness. You don't even need to do that research. And the other half of his friends say, oh, come on, Alex, that's obvious. If you're happy, you're going to be grateful. Happiness causes gratitude. You don't even need to do that research. So as Alex says, the only thing his friends agree on is he doesn't need to do his research. But so let's look at, actually in that context, prospective studies, more compelling evidence for causative relationships between gratitude and happiness. So longitudinal or prospective studies show that over time, gratitude predicts increased happiness, increased social integration and social support. In fact, that might be one reason that gratitude predicts increased happiness. Decreased depression, decreased suicidal ideation across time, and more recently we showed that it predicts increased joy across time. So better evidence, more compelling than cross-sectional studies, but still the gold star in psychology for determining causation is true experimental work. Well, now fortunately over 40 by my count, actually it's probably over 50 now. True experimental studies have shown that gratitude exercises produce increased well-being, both in the immediate and in more long-term studies. I'm going to show you one of my studies that we published in 2015 that showed that grateful recounting produces a pattern of well-being growth. We used what we call the Gratitude 3 Blessings intervention. The whole class of counting blessings interventions we've called grateful recounting, and I'll probably refer to that, those kinds of interventions by that term throughout this talk. But basically what this is derived from Seligman et al. Basically people recall 3 good things or 3 things that have gone well from the past 48 hours, and then they write about how each of those good things makes them feel grateful. Pretty simple, doesn't take very long. So let's look at this procedure. After measuring well-being, we randomly assign people to a placebo control condition, a pride 3 blessings control, or a gratitude 3 blessings control. Each of these people in these conditions did their exercise each day for a week. The pride 3 blessings and the gratitude 3 blessings were exactly the same. They recalled 3 good things from the last 48 hours. But with the only difference that in the pride 3 blessings treatment, they wrote about how each good thing made them feel better than others or better than average. Whereas in the gratitude treatment, they wrote about how each thing made them feel grateful. After that week-long treatment, we measured well-being again. After another week after treatment, we measured well-being, and then finally at 5 weeks after treatment. And please feel free to email me and be happy to send you these slides too. So what we found? Fine. We used a composite subjective well-being measure. If you heard Ken's talk yesterday, it was basically a combination of positive minus negative affect and satisfaction with life. You can see our memory placebo did work. People got happier with our placebo treatment, but as you would hope, a placebo treatment, it started to tail off by 5 weeks back toward baseline. The Pride 3 Blessings treatment actually didn't really perform any differently than the placebo treatment. Did increase well-being, but no different than our placebo. But note that our gratitude treatment significantly outperformed the other 2 treatments. Now, a couple of things I want to highlight. First of all, it's not just activating positive memories that can explain why counting your blessings works. there's something important about grateful processing, right? That's why we used the Pride 3 Blessings treatment. They were recalling just as many positive memories as those in the gratitude treatment, but they're processing them in a different way. It was only that processing them in a grateful way that it outperformed placebo. And then secondly, note that the well-being of those in the gratitude treatment is still going up at 5 weeks. Now, I was surprised by this, I guess because I'm kind of cynical, but I shouldn't have been. Why? Because the 2005 Seligman et al. Study found the same thing, right? And it was still going up at like 6 months post-treatment. So now the question then is, well, why? My Ph.D. is in clinical. You'd never find this in clinical studies. You know, as soon as treatment of cognitive therapy is over, or drug therapy, whatever, you know, depression starts going back up again, right? But so why? Why does well-being continue to increase after the recounting treatment? Well, we believe it's because grateful recounting trains us in a way of thinking that promotes future well-being. I think a news clip said it trains your brain for happiness or something like that. So grateful recounting may train you to notice the good in your life and to appreciate the good in your life. And we're kind of investigating that. This brings up the important topic of the psychological processes of appreciation, which we really don't have time to dwell on here. Let me show you a second true experimental study called where we used a technique that we called grateful reappraisal. And we basically asked the question, does grateful processing help take care of the emotional business of unpleasant memories? Or asked a different way, does thinking gratefully about a troubling event from our past help bring closure to the memory? I've really found Denise Vikey's approach really to open memories really intriguing. Basically, we had everybody in this study recall an unpleasant open memory. We warned them a day before that this is what they were going to do. And following Vikey's approach to open memories, or her definition, an open memory is a memory that you feel like you have some unfinished business with. It intrudes into consciousness at unwelcome times. You don't really understand it very well. It's still an open book to you. Most everybody was able to recall an open memory. One person said they recalled an open memory but reported it was completely closed right away. So they weren't involved in the study. So after having everybody recall an open memory, we randomly assigned people to one of three treatment conditions: a control writing condition where they were writing about something completely irrelevant to the memory, a emotional expression or emotional disclosure condition. This basically followed the instructions of Jamie Pennybaker's work, where they wrote about all the thoughts and emotions associated with their unpleasant open memory. And then finally, the active treatment condition, grateful processing, where we asked people to recall the memory and then write. And then we said sometimes, even though something is a bad, unpleasant event, there are positive consequences of the event that we can now feel grateful for. Each of these, they wrote about this following Pennybaker's approach for 20 minutes for 3 days. After that, we measured various variables that I'm going to explain to you again, and then 1 week later. So one of the things we asked them, of course, is memory closure. Did grateful processing help bring closure to the memory? As any good behaviorist would predict, the control treatment did improve closure. Just why? Because in the assessment, they had to recall the memory, and so you would get some kind of desensitization, or, you know, being a cognitive person, I would say it's more kind of, it automatically kind of reintegrates. The emotional disclosure condition did a little bit better, but not significantly better in producing closure. The grateful reappraisal condition did significantly better. But note when it is that the three treatments really are distanced from each other, it's in that 1 week follow-up period. Now, in each assessment period, we also asked our participants to, as you're recalling the memory, how does it impact you emotionally, from 1 very negatively to, I think, 7 very positively. So how did the gratitude intervention make people feel about their open memory? Again, in the control condition, you see some improvement over the treatment period, but declining in the follow-up period. The emotional disclosure period treatment did a little bit better, but you can see that the gratitude treatment did significantly better, and again, is improving, continuing to improve in the follow-up period. Finally, we asked, how did the gratitude intervention impact the intrusiveness of the memory? Now, we use something here which kind of an experimental intrusiveness measure, which is really a real-time measure. So in each assessment period, after they recalled their unpleasant open memory and described it with a few variables that I've just talked about there, then we asked them to recall as many positive events from their life for like 3 minutes, and they were to write down each positive event that they recall. But if while they are trying to recall those positive events, their unpleasant open memory came to mind, they were supposed to check a box at the bottom of the page. Okay, so this allowed us to have a real-time measure of intrusiveness of their unpleasant open memory. So what did we find? Interestingly, this is really kind of a non-self-report measure. So we find no real changes with the control condition. Not sure exactly why the emotional disclosure pattern of data was what it is, but most notably, you can see that the gratitude treatment, the intrusiveness of the memory went down over the course of the treatment and continued to go down in the follow-up period. So one of the things one of my students, Jens Uter, did is he did textual analysis. Of course, they wrote all this stuff, and so he had to put this all onto his computer. And what he found was that in textual analysis of the grateful reappraisal writing samples, those whose writing indicated positive insight into their troubling event gained the most from the intervention. It wasn't just this. We used Jamie Pennybaker's Loop program, if you're familiar with that, or linguistic inquiry and word count. It wasn't just number of positive words. It wasn't just number of insight words. It was the combination of positive and insight words, which to me is kind of a nice indirect measure of meaning, and maybe more about that later. So what did we find from this study? In summary, grateful processing of unpleasant open memories brought more closure to those memories, decreased the unpleasant emotional impact of recalling those memories, and decreased the intrusiveness of those memories. Our results suggest that grateful processing helps take care of the emotional business of troubling memories, and this might be one reason that grateful people tend to be happy people. It was as though that gratitude allowed them to see these difficult events from a new perspective with new eyes. As Marcel Proust said, the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeing new landscapes, but in having new eyes. So we've seen, in fact, gratitude is good, in the words of C.S. Lewis, except where intolerably adverse circumstances interfere. Praise almost seems to be inner health made audible. So gratitude does indeed look like it's an important part of a flourishing life, but this begs our third question. Well, how? How is gratitude good? How is it important to the good life? And here's where I want to introduce my amplification theory of gratitude to you. We've argued that gratitude is the amplifier of the good, and this is how it promotes human flourishing. So just as an amplifier, right now, amplifies the sound going into a microphone, so gratitude, too, turns up the volume of the good in our life, so to speak. Just as a magnifying glass magnifies the text that it is focused on, so too gratitude magnifies the good that it is focused on. You can see where gratitude might become maladaptive as well, but we'll maybe talk about that in the question and answer time. So gratitude helps us identify who and what is good and beneficial for our life. Research shows that gratitude amplifies the good in the present, in our ongoing experience. If we experience benefits with gratitude, it amplifies the positive affect we experience, and including joy, by the way. It amplifies the good in our past. We're more aware of good events from our past. We're even more aware of the good from bad events from our past. It amplifies the good in our relationships. Sarah Aljo's work has shown that gratitude helps us find new relationships that are important to our well-being, helps remind us of relationships that are important to our well-being, and thirdly, it helps bind relationships and improve that are important to our well-being. And finally, I'd like to suggest that it amplifies meaning in our life too. I really didn't think much about this topic before, I must confess, Paul asked me to talk and at this conference, and I thought, do I have any data on this? Well, I have one item that I've used in several studies. It's the first item of Ed Diener's Flourishing scale, which is I live a meaningful and purposeful life. So there are problems, of course, with that, but the data I found the results that I found were pretty compelling. So how is gratitude important to a meaningful life? Just a quick review of the gratitude and meaning research. Gratitude strongly correlated with meaning in life. The studies I reviewed and also the several correlations in my studies, we found that the correlations range from 0.51 to 0.66. Gratitude also partially mediates the relationship between gratitude and well-being. We found this in our studies, and a number of other studies have found this too. So that one important reason that gratitude enhances subjective well-being might be in that it supports meaning in life. Gratitude also predicts increased meaning over time. In other words, when we look at time one gratitude, it predicts increased time to meaning after controlling for time one meaning. We found this, and also several other studies have found this as well. And then finally, which is more compelling for me, in a recent RCT, we found that grateful recounting significantly improved meaning in life compared to our placebo treatment. So this, we used the Gratitude 3 Blessings intervention in this study, much as the first study. In this case, we only had two conditions, the gratitude condition and the placebo condition. Unfortunately, those in the placebo condition, meaning went down. And again, this is a one-item measure, so it's not, not really great measure of meaning, but it's pretty good, I think. So I'm not sure what that means, except that my classes suck the meaning out of my students. But note what happens with the grateful recounting. Their meaning went significantly up, and like our other study, it kept going up in the week after treatment, or 2 weeks after treatment. So that to me is a compelling kind of experimental example of how gratitude enhances meaning, and right now we're trying another experimental test. So this suggests an intriguing model to me. Gratitude enhances meaning, which then enhances subjective well-being. But this begs our fourth question, well, how might gratitude enhance meaning in life? Well, in Laura King's Current Directions review, she showed that social relationships enhance meaning. When we feel like our relationship needs are being met, we're more likely to say that life is meaningful. Those of religious faith are more likely to say that life is meaningful. Those of higher income are more likely to say life is meaningful. And finally, positive emotion, both in cross-sectional, prospective, and experimental studies, has shown to promote meaning. I've done that work with Josh Hicks. And so how can we synthesize this? What does this all mean in the context of gratitude? Well, it looks like to me all those things, when we feel like life is good to us, then we tend to feel that life is more meaningful. Okay, all right? So this suggests the following model. Gratitude, we've argued, amplifies the good in life, which helps us kind of come to the conclusion that indeed life is really good, which enhances meaning, which then enhances subjective well-being. And the other thing I add to that is, remember that meaning also promotes gratitude. Maybe I didn't tell you that. Meaning also promotes gratitude over time. So there's an interesting cycle of virtue there. So, story so far. Gratitude's important to well-being. Gratitude promotes well-being by amplifying the good in life. And one way that gratitude promotes well-being is by encouraging meaning. Okay, well, this is all great. And you'd think that with results like this would be met with a lot of enthusiasm. But unfortunately, we get a lot of skepticism about our research. And of course, you know who it is that's most skeptical. It's us academics. So, well, why? It's almost like the ideal academic demeanor is that to be scientific is to be cynical, to be intelligent is to find what's wrong in everybody else's work rather than what's right in it. I mean, why? Why are we so grumpy? Why are we so cynical as academics, particularly cynical about gratitude? Well, I got an insight into this when I was eavesdropping on a couple of my students one day. I wasn't doing this on purpose, but every once in a while we have this opportunity, right? So I was lecturing to my students about gratitude in my positive psych course, and we did the grateful recounting the gratitude 3 blessings study. We did the exercise right in class, and I had the students do it. And I packed up my stuff and was walking toward my office, and happened to be walking right behind 2 students who were talking about the class. And one student was talking about how wonderful that exercise was, and how encouraged it made her, and how much she thought she could incorporate in her life, and it would be a great thing to do and whatnot. And she said to her other student, well, what do you think? And the other student, who I knew was kind of cynical about the whole class, just basically said, well, gratitude isn't for me. You will hear a lot of academics. I heard one of my good friends who I won't say, I hate counting my blessings. So we say, I hate counting my blessings, and we say, gee, gratitude isn't for me. Well, there's a couple of findings I want to highlight before I let you come to that conclusion. We have found that gratitude treatments work best with those who are more depressed. Almost all of these findings, by the way, were a surprise to me, and most of them I was predicting the opposite. We have found that gratitude treatments work best with those who enjoyed the treatment least. In other words, we measured at the end of the first week in that first experimental study that I showed you. At the end of the first week, we asked people, how much did you enjoy the treatment? Now, to be fair, most people said they enjoyed it, okay? But there was a negative correlation, small, but negative. It was like about 0.2. A negative correlation between how much they said they enjoyed the treatment and how much they gained from it. Okay? We also found, contrary to my expectations, the gratitude treatment worked better with men than women. I expected the opposite, as other scholars in this area predicted too, because men tend to value gratitude less than women, and men tend to be dispositionally less grateful. I thought women would enjoy it more and get more out of it. No, women still got something out of it, but men got more out of it. And finally, we and others found that gratitude treatments work best with those least grateful. Well, how can we make sense of all these findings? Well, it's really kind of simple. Gratitude exercises work best for those who need it most. We don't say, oh, you need cognitive therapy of depression to a person who's already very happy, right? This seems kind of obvious, right? Seems kind of easy. Gratitude exercises work best for those who need it most, but interestingly, this is inconsistent with what many positive psychologists are suggesting, I think. They say things like, well, if it doesn't feel right for you, don't do it. If it doesn't fit you, don't do it. What do they mean by fit? Read carefully about what they mean. It means you enjoy it. Well, think about that, though, a little bit. What if I said to someone who's overweight, well, if physical exercise doesn't feel right to you, then it probably isn't for you. It's the very person, the more overweight I am, the more difficult exercise and the more unpleasant it becomes. But that doesn't mean I don't need it. That's an indication I need it even more, right? So it just might be us grumps who don't like gratitude very well that have the most to gain from gratitude. So, in conclusion, we've seen that gratitude is indeed good. One of the reasons it promotes a flourishing life is because it amplifies the good in life. One way it might encourage subjective well-being is by encouraging meaning. But as I end, I want to give you a little bit of perspective on gratitude. First of all, gratitude's not a magic elixir for happiness. There's actually 7 I think I told you all in my workshop 6. There's actually 7 true experimental studies I've done in my lab. 6 of the 7 have shown significant increases in well-being as we predicted. One, my most recent one, did not. I think, and I had the most subjects in that one. So it isn't this kind of magic formula that we just count our blessings and bibbly-bobbly-boo, we're happy, right? It's really the life orientation of gratitude, not simply counting your blessings a few times, that enhances well-being. And guess what? Developing a life orientation or a lifestyle of gratitude, to use Adler's word, lifestyle, is not easy. That's not an easy thing to do, and the less grateful we are, the more difficult or unpleasant it might be to do that. Thirdly, I want to emphasize that it's the expression of gratitude, not just experiencing it, that's important to a life orientation of gratitude. Too often in positive psychology, I really think the problem with positive psychology is not positive psychology 1.0, it's popular interpretations of positive psychology 1.0, and we just emphasize the positive. And and a lot of times you see this, just sit in the quiet of it's this kind of Gnostic gratitude. Just sit in the quiet of your study and experience gratitude. But gratitude, we experience gratitude so to express it. Not just by saying thank you, but actually doing other things for other people. Not just our benefactors, but others too, research shows. So it's the expression of gratitude that's important as well as the experience. Both gratitude and meaning are not easy paths to happiness. You don't slide into gratitude. You don't just slide into happiness. If you're not happy, there's a good reason you're not happy. There's an obstacle to it. And to become a more grateful person, it is not easy, and it, in fact, might be unpleasant at times. And so, but I would conclude still, though, that although gratitude's not an easy road to happiness, it is nonetheless a time-tested and empirically tested, reliable road to well-being, and it's a road well worth the journey. But the journey may not be easy. It may be a rough road, and it may even be a road that is unpleasant at times. In the wise words of St. John of the Cross, to come to the pleasure you have not, you must go by a way in which you enjoy not. And now, because I know that it would be good for my own well-being, and I probably should do this regardless of how it feels, let me just end with this word, thanks. And please feel free to email me if you want these slides or my workshop slides if you missed that. It's basically P. Watkins at EWU, Eastern Washington University, ew.edu. And if you're really, really interested in getting more involved in gratitude research, here's the commercial that research might suggest that will ruin my authentic expression of gratitude. You might be interested in one of my books. So again, thank you for hanging around on the Sunday afternoon and listening to me drone on. So thanks.